Hello, you are now entering the infinite void. Hang on tight. We cannot save you now.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode. I'm your co-host Matty.
And I'm your co-host Jacob, and today's episode is part one of our new series, Humanity in the Future. So if you've been watching this podcast for a while, or if you're new, you'll find out pretty quickly that one of our favourite topics to talk about and discuss is probably the future. So we figured we might as well break it down into a series and kind of go through and tackle all of the funness and all of the scariness that the future has to offer for humanity.
Yeah, I think this is going to be probably our biggest series yet, isn't it? I think we're planning 10 sort of... This is almost more like part 0, to be honest, today's episode. I think the plan is to sort of discuss what we want to talk about in upcoming episodes and sort of some of the aspects of the future we're most interested in. And then as we go forward, I think the plan is each week we're going to tackle a new sort of area, new field that we're excited about and talk about some of the new technologies, new sort of things that you can expect over the next couple of decades and that we're excited about. So yeah, I think today's episode is going to be quite chill, a bit similar to last week, a bit of a catch up. And as we go on into the next few weeks, hopefully we're going to get into some really interesting technologies and science and space stuff, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think, yeah, like you were saying, this is definitely going to be probably our biggest series, and we've already, without like spending too much time on it, have already kind of thought it's probably going to be like a 10-parter, and that's without anybody like contacting us on social media and stuff and suggesting maybe something else as we slowly start working through this. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun. It's definitely going to be a nice long road ahead. Now we got a cool little theme to get stuck into for a while, and as you were saying, like this can go so many routes as well. Like I think that this series, probably out of all of the ones that we've done, will actually have something for everyone. Like this series is the series for your family if you're ever going to show them our podcast. Like there will be something in this for everybody, which is fun. Like as we'll see, just based off like the top of my notes, we're going to be discussing like art, music, currency, energy, medicine, like, and the list goes on. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be good as well to sort of set quite a few weeks aside to actually discuss this stuff, because we've done sort of odd episodes in the past and then we sort of forget about it. And I know the plan today is we're going to sort of talk a bit about what we've done in the past, so people know what to expect going forwards. But I always forget what we talk about, and it was so long ago that we did some of these episodes. It's probably going to be a good opportunity to really focus on them and revisit a few things and look at new stuff as well.
I think as well, we are open as well. If anybody wants it, we are willing to like go back and touch on some of the subjects. So for instance, now we've got a little list here of all of the old episodes that reference the future. So I thought it'd be cool to like kind of go through them, see what we've already touched on, see if anybody wants that for a future episode, like a part 2 of that part, or yeah, then we can kind of go from there. So surprising, Matty, we've done quite a lot of stuff on the future already. We've done 7 episodes, which I would consider fall under the topic of future. I mean, some of the other ones that we've done might do too, but yeah, so the 7 are, we've got space tourism, cities of the future, automation, sustainable energy, biotechnology, the future of gaming, and living forever.
Excellent.
Yeah, there were a few other ones, but I'm not really sure if they kind of fell into future living too much. But from what I remember, because some of these, like those first 4, space tourism, cities of the future, automation, and sustainable energy, they were like probably within the first 6 episodes of the podcast.
Yeah, some of those are really early on, and I think to be honest, we're still finding our feet a bit with it. So it might be a bit more polished this time if we discuss things like that again. But yeah, definitely out of those ones, sort of I'll kick off. The one that stands out for me is Cities of the Future. So I'm sure, as I said many times, I love sort of cities and sort of urban infrastructure and those sorts of things. So later on, we're going to discuss our plans for the next couple of episodes, and I've got a few that will probably fall under cities of the future, and there's definitely topics in there that I discussed before that I'm going to dive into in bigger detail, which I'm definitely going to enjoy.
Yeah, I was going to say the whole cities of the future one, and just kind of like home living, and like the whole idea of like AI and medicine, nanobots and stuff, like seemed to be a really fun conversation when we had it, and it was quite interesting because obviously we started this podcast like smack bang in the middle of a pandemic, and it was quite hopeful to see like a world where people would be living, like, as silly as it sounds, their best life with like a pod that you can go into that would diagnose you and stuff like that. And I was just thinking as well, when we were having those like discussions about like robot bin men and stuff like that, it'll be interesting because the next couple of weeks we'll obviously retouch on automation and robots, and I'm sure we'll be going back into AI a little bit as well. So this is kind of basically just what the podcast is, really, this future series, but we're just going to be diving into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I think I've got, you'll have to remind me of the list later on, but I think I've got 2 or 3 episodes that sort of cover things like that. And I think why it interests me is that, and why I brought it up the first time, is that, and particularly during a pandemic, sort of like home and like where we live is so much like an important part of your life. And it is really cool to talk about things like space tourism, these like really wacky stuff, you know, that may or may not happen. You know, they probably will happen, but you know, where you live and sort of how you live your life is obviously like so important and already impacts us. So like even small changes, which definitely are going to happen, can be quite sort of important to people. So I'm looking forward to those ones. And yeah, I know I enjoyed that episode when we did it the first time round as well. So
yeah, because I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before, so listeners, apologies if I'm just repeating myself now. But me and Matty actually haven't met each other in person. We've only ever communicated over Google Meets, and we did try Zoom at the start, but we didn't.
The early days of Zoom.
Yeah, do you remember?
40 minutes.
Yeah, the 40-minute time countdown and all that stuff. So me and Matty haven't actually met in person. So when we first started this podcast, we obviously had like a discussion beforehand of what we wanted to do, and we wrote a list. And it's funny, if you look at that list now, like there are some of those topics we still haven't touched on. Some of the other ones we like did straight away. But yeah, I wasn't aware of like how interested you were in like like the architecture as well of like the city and how it's built and how it manages people and the way that it works, if it's like proficient and stuff. And it was really fun to like watch you just like nerd out on that. So I'm excited for when we start like going back to that kind of stuff, because from what I've gathered from us is you're quite like into your like architectural, like logistics kind of stuff, and I'm like into like the more arty side of it. So I feel like together it's just
you tend to do topics that are more like out there and abstract, whereas I tend to do things that maybe some people find a bit boring, but I try to make interesting.
So I feel like this series is going to be good because, well, we're going to be talking about our lists in a minute, but from the ones that I've suggested and the ones you've suggested, I feel like it's a good list, and it'll be fun as well. It's like a hyperactive, I don't even know. Like if you look at this list, it's kind of like someone that's got ADHD, the amount of different topics. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. But should we maybe kind of like go through our ideas and see where we kind of want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So first, you're going to have to remind me what's on the list because I've completely forgotten since you asked for my ideas what
that's
you
fine.
suggested.
That's fine. So on your list,
We need some funky countdown music now.
so on your list, you have gone with public transport,
Mhm.
construction technology, retail and workspaces, and worldwide logistics and medicine.
Okay.
Which I thought is a pretty solid list.
Mhm.
They're all
Yeah,
things that are going to
definitely.
massively change in the future.
Yeah, definitely a few of those things come into that city living that we talked about.
Exactly. It's right up your street, that list. And then
I will say that you put your list in before me, so you did take a few topics that I was already thinking about.
Yeah, to be fair, I was gonna say from at least two of them, I was thinking that you were definitely gonna want to suggest those. So, and then for my ones, I've suggested the future of rural living because I figured we've done city living, rural living could be fun, and I can imagine future farming is going to be awesome with like robots. I've done the future of music, the future of art, the future of currency, and I think we probably both would have chosen this one, the future of space exploration.
Yep.
So I think that those 10 suggestions are covering quite a lot of different areas. So if you're artsy, there's something for you, and if you love how humans work, there's something for you.
We love logistics.
Yeah, if you love logistics, there's something for you, and if you love the economy and currency, there's something for you. But yeah, I'll kick it off. So I wanted to do rural living because, like I just said, I think we did one on like living in cities of the future, and I think rural living, for more so, was just for the research for me. I'm really interested in looking into that one in the coming weeks because growing up in a little seaside town, I'm very interested in seeing how technology can benefit those kind of areas and areas that are out in the sticks already that haven't been benefited by technology. I'm also interested in how they're going to kind of leapfrog certain industries or like certain technologies, you know, for instance, like with like, I don't know, say Africa might not go down the industrial route so much because they can just jump to Wi-Fi, internet, and renewable energy and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff I want to touch on that one because I think it would be quite interesting. And I'm also interested in seeing how like they connect people like consciously in rural areas because I think with climate change and everything that's coming in the future, we're obviously going to have to get pretty good at like mass migration. And I think this obviously then means a lot of rural areas being built up to house humans. So I just think it'll be really interesting to see how the future tackles that one. So
yeah,
that's my little first one.
Yeah, obviously agriculture being a part of that is massive. Food and water, sort of both things we need, and it looked like they could become resources that become quite scarce in the future. So there's a lot of work going on in that area, and I think rural communities is an interesting one because they're obviously more behind on the tech curve. Like when you compare little seaside towns to sort of London, I think they're obviously behind on the tech curve, but they've got maybe the most to gain from it because of a wide range of issues. You know, sort of declining population, aging population, being more spread out physically. They sort of lend themselves more to technological solutions, and will probably have a bigger benefit in the future, but are behind at the moment. So it's quite interesting, and I know in the past that we sort of discussed things like Starlink and sort of rural internet and stuff. So again, it's something we've sort of dabbled in the past, but it would be good to spend a nice solid hour on that talking about things. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. And then next one is the future of music. And the reason why I picked this one was I've seen a shift recently in like music videos and what people have to offer. And I'm super interested in it, especially with like virtual reality, this idea of like hosting virtual shows, and with this pandemic as well, people not being able to go to like raves and clubs and festivals. I'm very interested in the technology that like certain artists are using and being able to stream and stuff. Like I've seen a big rise this year in like musicians streaming like certain events and like album playbacks and stuff like that. So I thought I'd commit an episode to seeing what the future of music has got to offer, if it's going to be like Ready Player One plug-in festivals or stuff like that. And then I picked the future of art as well, because it kind of goes hand in hand with music. And I haven't really spoken about it much on this podcast, but the last couple of months I've been massively getting involved in NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and diving into the crazy world that is crypto art. So I figured it's probably about time I start talking about that, because I've got a few as well. So that's can do some selfless promotion if anybody
nice plug.
if anybody wants to go and buy my NFTs.
Yeah, but the music and art ones, I think we discussed. I think it's mainly television we talked about in one of our AI episodes, about how in the future AI could maybe be doing this sort of stuff, and like that's maybe a bit of a worry that how could like humans compete when an artificial intelligence can just splurge out a whole TV show or a whole song, or a piece of art that is decent with obviously no effort. And I think that's something that I want to touch on it now. So I have no artistic ability, so I'll have to focus on the techie side of it rather than the actual music and art. So.
Well, that's fun. I'm interested as well in kind of like the micro aspect of it, if that's the right word. So taking it from this macro to micro kind of like approach, where I was basically listening to these two people chatting today on YouTube, and I can't remember what it was on, but they were basically talking about how like in the future, instead of there being like media corporations that create said media for you, there'll just be like loads of people, kind of like you're already seeing now, like with streaming and like stuff like that. Instead of there being like actual main channels, there'll just be like thousands of streaming channels, and you'll kind of just tune into like the artists that you appreciate, kind of thing, and there'll always be shows and stuff happening, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I kind of liked the idea of that, so I wanted to kind of go through and break that down. But then the next one, the future of currency, I'm surprised me and you haven't done an episode on cryptocurrency yet, if I'm honest with you. I know we're not like massively into it. Like if you go on Twitter, you won't catch either of us having laser eyes as our profile picture or anything just yet, but I figured that would probably be a good one to do. And I can imagine that there might even be some people that watch this podcast that have heard of it or are seeing a lot about it based off just what's happening on social media, but don't really have a clue about it.
I'll let you on in on a secret. After sort of architecture and urban planning, economics is probably my second most enjoyed interest. I love economics and sort of banking systems and financial systems. So always watching Economics Explained on YouTube, an excellent channel. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
So that'll be a good one for you. And I think that'll be just a good one in general, because there's been a lot going on even recently with like currencies and the discussion of currencies, and even if you don't really agree with some of the cryptocurrency ideas, what they're doing is kind of cool, like with Cardino and stuff in Africa. So I wanted to touch up on all of that. And then the final one, which I think was probably the one we will both have most to talk about from my list, is the future of space exploration, because it's all we pretty much talk about. I think
every week.
Yes. But I think that episode will really just be about like a logical standpoint of colonizing the solar system, and then probably a fun, unlogical standpoint of colonizing the galaxy, maybe. And crazy ways we can do it.
We seem to be, I remember growing up, Mars seemed like it wasn't going to happen, but we seem to be now like at a point where things could very quickly lead on to one another. Already we're talking about, building moon and Martian bases that would act as sort of like pit stops to getting other places and things. So I think the next 5 years for that's going to be really interesting, and then hopefully that will speed things up going forwards, because it's been so long since we've been on the moon.
Yeah, I was saying this because I went back home and actually got to see all my family last week, which was awesome because I haven't been home for a year. And I was having a chat to them, and they were like, we were kind of just like talking about what's coming, because they don't really keep up with anything in space. They kind of just wait for me, and then they're like, what's going on? And I kind of like tell them all, and they're like, no way. But we were like talking about it all, and we were having this conversation because they were like, oh, how's it all going? Because like my mum was saying how the news don't really talk about it, like, unless something goes wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, I won't hear from my mum about what SpaceX are doing unless it's a failed hop or a rocket's exploded or something like that. Like, my mum won't message me and be like, oh my God, SpaceX, congratulations, they landed SN15. She'll just go, what's happened with their F9 booster or something like that. So we were having this discussion, and like, it must like really suck for like a generation to like see people land on the moon and then just nothing happen for like 50 years.
Yep.
Because like with us, like we weren't even around to see anybody walk on the moon, but we kind of grew up in an age where CGI was probably good enough to persuade your imagination. Because like even our parents is like CGI, they had it. But like Star Wars and everything, it was all stop motion. Do you know what I mean? And like you could tell it wasn't real. But like us as children, the lines were kind of blurred. And like, I don't know. I feel like if you turn to my mum and were like, contemplate what a multiverse is and the spaceship that you'd use to traverse it, my mum would probably struggle with that. But you could probably ask any kid that reads Marvel comics or something, and they can kind of contemplate that idea, do you know what I mean, and visualize it in their head. And I think that's why our generation is kind of like, there's like this fire that's been lit behind us, because I think we've grown up with such good CGI and storytelling that we can really like visualize it, and like it doesn't seem like this kind of sci-fi not possible dream. It's like something that we could totally do, and it's more so a financial thing.
Yeah, I think the Apollo missions were sort of so ahead of their time. It was like just ridiculous what they actually achieved. And I don't think if it wasn't for Apollo and sort of the circumstances of, the Cold War and the space race sort of pushing it along then, I think we might still not have put someone on the moon if it wasn't for Apollo. So yeah, it feels like we haven't done anything for 50 years, but Apollo's just so ahead of its time. And, maybe that, hopefully we're going from like a more sustained sort of space exploration going forward, which will allow us to actually do stuff and stay places for longer. And yeah, that I think it's almost like the first proper step. Apollo was more like a blip that wasn't really meant to happen. So it's gonna be cool, I think. I can't wait for that episode.
Yeah, it'll be fun because I think it'll be everything from stuff that is definitely going to happen maybe in our lifetimes to crazy guesses of stuff that's going to happen in the future. But yeah, what was your list again?
Right, I've got to try and remember now. So first one on my list was public transport, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, public transport. I know we've sort of talked a bit about it in the past, but I really think will take off in the future in different forms. I'm sure I'll be able to get a rant in there about electric scooters at some point. Which
I was
good.
I was gonna say, does anybody remember the famous rant?
But yeah, it's going to be. I think public transport's going to become more important over the sort of next 2 decades because of climate change, more people moving to cities getting bigger, and I feel like it's sort of stalled a bit. Like nothing's really developed like, in the UK at least. And sort of my perception of it is that nothing's really changed for like the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, trains still sort of just go into cities semi regularly, and there's some buses. Like nothing's really happened. So I'm looking forward to sort of new technologies and new sort of ways of doing public transport, because I think it's sort of underutilized at the moment. It's not designed particularly well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, and a lot of sort of aspects of that one. Yeah,
I'm interested in I don't know what you'd call it. Not like the entertainment, but like the experience of the public transport. Like I'm excited to kind of discuss like what you'll be doing on the train in the future, not just like reading your emails or something. Like what will there be to do on the train in 200 years time?
Yeah,
which I think will be fun.
Yeah, well, I say it's going to become more important. In some ways, maybe it won't, because there is the second one of the other episodes that I what were my other episodes again?
You picked transportation, construction technology, retail and workspace, and worldwide logistics.
Yeah, medicine.
And medicine.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the transport sort of goes into the workspace and retail spaces. So this is sort of my bread and butter stuff, urban planning, and there's this sort of big movement at the moment about like changing how cities are designed and stuff. And a lot of people are realizing that cities like LA are just terrible. You know, building cities where everyone lives sort of a few miles from the center in massive sprawling suburbs and has to drive along freeways to get into a very dense sort of urban core. It's just a terrible way to do stuff. It's really, really bad. And in Europe, in some ways, we're very fortunate that our cities are so old that they didn't develop with the car. You know, a lot of cities on the continent, in Denmark, in the Netherlands, they're sort of already built in a way that means that people can live and work in the same area. A lot of people live sort of in cities, and they bike to work, and they sort of walk to the shops, and they do this sort of thing. Whereas a lot of sort of our American viewers won't really know about that, because you sort of live in a suburb and you drive an hour to work, and then you drive half hour to the shops, and sort of everything is so spread out and massive that this sort of idea of sort of mixed use and modern living isn't really a thing. And I think that's sort of become more important to people, particularly during the lockdown. They want to live in places that are nice to live, and sort of have amenities nearby, so they're not sort of isolated in their homes all the time.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds interesting as well. And like, I'm also interested in the work aspect too, because like even now, like the work environment has changed so much in the last year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even for me now, I'm only in 1 day a week, and it's all open plan, and you can't like I don't have a specific place now in the office anymore. Like I can sit wherever I want, and it's all rented out space, and you have laptops instead of desktops and stuff. So there's all of that comes with it too, like the technology aspect of it, which is going to be interesting.
Yeah, a lot's changed, and I'm sure every single day I see like a news story about how people want people to be back in office, and people saying they don't want to be back in the office. And if anything changes, hopefully it'll be sort of flexibility and allowing people to do what they want, because I enjoy going into the office on occasion and sort of spending time with people, and sort of particularly being young and still sort of learning about stuff. It's quite important, but it is nice to be able to work at home when you want to. So yeah, and
it's all about finding like the perfect balance as well, isn't it? And I can imagine when we do our research and we have these discussions in these episodes as well, there's that mental health aspect too, isn't there, as well? Like even though it's great to be home all the time, like you don't want to be alone at home all the time in the same spot. You want to be socializing and getting a bit of exercise.
Yeah, But the reason that it sort of plays off the public transport one is that I think when we talk about public transport, we still think about people like commuting into work and stuff. Whereas in the sort of retail and working episode, we might see that maybe people just won't travel as much. And in the UK, they're building HS2, the new high-speed line from London to Birmingham and up to Manchester and Leeds and things. Already people are starting to question, like, do we actually need this? Do we need to be able to like transport vast amount of people from London to Birmingham every day, or people just do that sort of on Zoom now instead? So I think those two episodes will sort of almost feel at odds with one another, like, oh, because I want to see infrastructure being built, and I want to see, you know, the cycle highways and trains and subway systems and stuff. At the same time, do you really need it? Like, are people either going to be using this in 10, 20 years time, or is it for the age of people commuting into the office every day? So yeah, I think those two are going to be interesting. And yeah, as I said, that's sort of what I enjoy.
And then medicine, I think, will be fun because it'll just kind of be an extension on the biotechnology one and the AI discussions that we've had, talking about being able to like monitor you and keep an eye out on you, really, more than anything.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. That medicine one I want to do, revisit some of those tech stuff, but it'd be also interesting to sort of discuss some more of the, not so much the biotechnology, but like the actual medicine. So like where we are with things like like bacterial resistance of things, and like how we're going to solve that problem, and actual like surgical methods and prosthetics and those sorts of things. So I think that episode will be a nice revisit of biotechnology, and then hopefully build on that with some more actual biological and chemical stuff.
Do you think that because this is something that I'm slightly interested in, but not massively, so don't come for me, Twitter, but not that you would, but what about like genetic enhancements and stuff? So like, because I was thinking about this, is this something that we're going to include in that episode? Because I was watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and they're kind of touching on this idea that we might in the future want to like genetically modify humans to do certain things. So like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a super soldier. Like we might just have people that are lumberjacks genetically modified to be stronger than the average person, so they can lug more trees, for instance, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you get into some really weird, particularly ethical debates about this, and you sort of stray into the topic of eugenics and stuff, which obviously we're trying to avoid. But yeah, it becomes a bit sort of sketchy about where you draw the line. I think might have been a biotechnology episode, I sort of talked about how there's this like concern that, okay, well, if you legalize this stuff, then the first people to use it are going to be rich people. And what if we end up with like a race of like very wealthy, super enhanced humans that just sort of like rule over us? So
ideally, it's not what you want, is it?
Yeah. There's a lot of questions about that one. I'm sure we'll try and tackle them sensitively in the future.
But that's fun.
The other one I had was on construction technologies. So this is something I've got into more recently. There's a YouTube channel called the B1M.
Okay.
They do a lot of videos on construction and stuff. And yeah, a lot of sort of construction techniques and methods are sort of changing at the moment, and are being adapted. And there's some really like interesting stats about it. So one that's starting to take off is sort of timber frame buildings and sort of lumber base buildings. So that's a sort of technology that's being advanced. So in the last sort of few months, the first sort of high-rise structures made completely out of wood are being built in cities. Which is obviously interesting, and you can sort of grow it sustainably and make these buildings effectively carbon neutral compared to concrete and stuff. Concrete is not particularly great for the environment. It uses a huge amount of CO2. I think it's something like a third of all
Jeez.
CO2 emissions come from the construction industry, which is mostly just concrete. And so, some of the stats about it, I think when China was booming a few years back, they used the same amount of concrete in 2 years as the US used in the entire 20th century. Like the amount of construction that is going on at the moment is absolutely huge.
That's insane.
They reckon over the next, I think, 3 or 4 decades, we're going to build the equivalent of a New York City every month on the world somewhere. So,
God,
like with population growing as it is in particularly in Africa, they reckon by 2100 the population of Lagos in Nigeria and I think Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are going to exceed 100 million. Like these are going to be sort of cities 3 times as big as Tokyo is now, and are going to have to be entirely built from very little at the moment. And if you start building stuff like that out of concrete and using steel, it becomes quite a big problem very quickly. So
I haven't thought about it like that. That's insane.
Yeah. So lumber buildings. Another one was sort of trying to incorporate carbon capture into stuff like this. So could we try and capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use that to cure the concrete? So rather than the concrete just sort of, because concrete uses is it lime? I think limestone, which or calcium carbonate, which has CO2 in it, and when you heat it up to cure it, it releases it. So could we instead sort of pump CO2 into it, so our buildings are actually trapping carbon dioxide? So that's an interesting one. And then also modular buildings, so sort of building prefab components of buildings off-site and then just constructing it on-site. And already there's some interesting high-rises that are being built. One in Australia, effectively big, sort of like, so it's a tower, but like these vertebrae, these sections of it are built off-site where they can obviously be fabricated quicker and just essentially mass manufactured, and then just shipped to the city and just stacked on top of one of each other and bolted together sort of thing. So there's a lot of sort of construction technologies that are being developed and starting to be used. So that's going to be an interesting one, and something I've got really into recently.
That sounds like a interesting episode. I'm excited for that one.
Mm-hmm. And then my final one was
I think
so unprepared.
I think that might be it for you. Oh no, worldwide logistics, so shipping.
Oh, logistics. Yes.
That's your main one.
Yeah. So yeah, basically worldwide shipping networks and sort of plane transport of stuff. Again, sort of relates quite strongly to climate change and how we do it. And obviously with the Suez Canal being blocked recently, it's quite a topical thing to discuss as well.
And it's close to your transport as well, so it all kind of ties into each other on what we're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, mine very much my 5. Medicine's a bit of a different one, but the other 4 are quite sort of urban living and sort of infrastructure, logisticsy sort of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds good. So I'm just going to read out the entire list again for anyone listening, so you can make a mental note if there's one that you're interested in. But we've got the future of rural living, the future of music, the future of art, the future of currency, not cryptocurrency, sorry, just the future of currency. The future of space exploration, the future of public transport, the future of construction technology, the future of retail and workspace, and the future of worldwide logistics, and the future of medicine. So some quality ones coming up. Yeah. But
if any sort of listeners are particularly interested in one of those, then let us know, or feel free to suggest extra topics. We can make it a 11 or 12 part series.
Yeah. If you randomly come up with another one or have an idea that you think would be good for the series, just let us know and we can add it, because we're quite happy to have this one quite a nice long series. I think it's probably the most of our podcast of any of the ones that we've done, so I think we're both open.
Just thinking 10 episodes, we might be into sort of August at that time.
Yeah, to be fair, we'll be coming up on our
1 year anniversary.
Yeah. Is it in August or September? I can't actually remember.
I think we started discussing it in August, and our first episode went out in September, I think, or maybe October.
Insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely insane. And we recently just hit over 2,000 audio downloads and 2,000 video views as well on the YouTube, which is pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we could pretty much call it there if you want. Here's my random Jake thought of the week for anybody listening, if you want to have your mind broken a little bit, right? Talking about consciousness, okay?
Oh, no, not
yeah. So how about this for a mind-bending thought, okay, Matty?
Mm-hmm.
So evolution, right? What is the point of evolution? Just to ensure the survival of the species, I guess, yeah? Or to ensure that the next version of the species is better than the last for its own survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could make an argument that evolution is designed to keep the being alive, or to ensure that it can have an offspring so that its species stays alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But consciousness goes against evolution because it took 4 billion years to get you to this point where you had to eat and you had to do these things to be alive, to now where you can decide whether or not if you want to eat that thing. Right? So what the hell is that about? Why do you have evolution that got us to this point, and then consciousness emerges, and now consciousness can destroy everything that evolution has done within like 100 years? Like, because do you think that's weird? Because like you look at like a cat, for instance, and it's a slave to its biology. It will eat, it will sleep, and it will hunt, right? And it's not going to get up tomorrow and go, I'm just not going to eat anymore. I've decided I'm not going to eat. I'm going to starve myself to death, right? It will just eat whatever's putting in front of it. So why can self-aware beings go against their own evolution? It just seems really counterproductive. And like if you were going to make a conclusion that everything has a purpose, do you know what I mean? So like consciousness has a purpose. They kind of seem to butt heads. Physical evolution and consciousness in self-aware beings. But yeah, that's just Jake's random thought for the week. Anybody listening, if you can come up with a solution or why that would be, or if I've ruined your reality, please let me know, because this has genuinely been something I've been thinking about all week. And the other little bit to that is, what if consciousness, like being self-aware, like super intelligence, is just recognizing intelligence? I think I mentioned this a little bit last week. With you.
I think you mentioned that last week. Yeah.
Haven't got anywhere further with that one yet. So if anybody else has, let me know. But I will leave it there on the existential crisis that Jake is having. If you want to suggest any future Humanity episode parts, you can by dropping us a message on social media at Infinite Void Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. You can also drop us an email at theinfinitevoidpodcast@gmail.com if you want to send us a bit more of a lengthier message. We're also at over 100 subscribers now on our YouTube channel, so you can find us at youtube.com/infinitevoidpod, which is pretty cool. And we also have a Patreon, so go on to patreon.com and type in the Infinite Void Podcast, and you can go and check out all of our fancy little packages over there if you want to support us. And you can drop me a message on social media at Jacob E. Carson on both Instagram and Twitter. And you can drop Matty a message on social media at the Matty JMP. And yeah, guys, hope you've enjoyed part 1 of Humanity in the Future. Sorry if it was just a bit of an introduction, chilled episode, but we promise you from now on, we're going to be diving deep into what the future has to offer. So yeah, we look forward to getting this series going, and we will see you in the Infinite Void next week. Oh, and go and follow and like our new show this week on Planet Earth. If you're listening to this when it's coming out on Friday, we'll have a new episode of the new show out tomorrow on Saturday as well. So that's great. Anyway, yeah, see you next week. Hey everyone, we wanted to take a moment to tell you about our brand new Patreon page.
Yeah, so we've devised a load of new goodies that are neatly packaged across 3 different tiers for you.
Tiers start at £3 and go all the way up to £10 a month.
Just to say, the Patreon is in no way an obligation, and we're going to continue making the podcast as it is freely available across all the platforms. But if you'd like to support us and show your support, you can now.
So yeah, head over to patreon.com/Infinite Void Pod for more information.